Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about how to use the Symmetry tool in Procreate. I only recently started using this tool. I'd never really paid attention to the drawing guides before, but I found that they can be really helpful. So if you go up to your canvas, you'll see that there's a little toggle for drawing guide, and this is what's going to turn on your drawing guide menu that allows you to use all of the different guides. The default here is a 2D guide, but if you go to Edit Drawing Guide, it'll take you to a new menu that shows you all of your different options. So in this app, you have 2D, isometric, perspective, and then a symmetry tool, which is what we're going to be using here. And within the symmetry guide, there are 4 different options. There's vertical, horizontal, quadrant, and radial, and all 4 of these are going to give you different effects. I also want to note that if you want to change the color of your drawing guide, you can do so by dragging your cursor along this color bar up at the top, and that will allow you to control the color of your drawing guide. And now we're just going to get started with the vertical tool. So this tool works by mirroring anything that you draw on one side of the guideline. That means that anything I'm drawing on the left side of the guideline is being reflected and mirrored perfectly on the other side. This works for spacing too. However far I draw away from the line on the left side is how far the line will show up on the right side. You'll also notice that as I'm writing the word vertical here, the letters are flipped so they're actually backwards on the right side. One thing to note about using drawing guides is when you go up to your layers, you'll see that the layer you're drawing on says assisted. That means that the drawing guide is only turned on that layer. If you open a new layer and draw, you'll see that the lines are no longer reflected on the right. This means if you want to do certain things that are symmetrical, you'll do them on one layer, and then if you want to freehand things, you'll have to draw them on a separate layer or turn off assisted drawing. Now I'm going to pick a different color and switch over to the horizontal tool. This works in the exact same way that the vertical tool does. It just flips it so it's across a horizontal line instead of a vertical line. But the exact same principles still apply. Even when I'm writing the word horizontal, you can still see that the words are flipped, but because it's horizontal, the words are now upside down instead of backwards. Now I'm going to pick another color and switch to the quadrant tool. This combines both a vertical and a horizontal line to create 4 sections. So any of the sections that you draw in will then be reflected in the other 3 sections. How this tool works is more apparent as I'm writing the word quadrant, because you can see that the words are flipped to the right and they're backwards there, but they're also flipped upside down over the horizontal line. So far, we've only been using the Symmetry tool to reflect and mirror the things you've been drawing. But if you go back to your drawing guide menu, you can see at the bottom there's a toggle that says Rotational Symmetry. When you turn that on, instead of mirroring and flipping the image over a line, it takes it and copies it, but also rotates it. This means nothing that you draw is going to be flipped or backwards, it's just going to be rotated. I think this concept becomes a little bit easier to understand when I write the word rotate, because you'll see that as I'm writing it, if you were to flip the actual canvas of the page any direction, the word would still be upright and facing the same way no matter which way you turned it. You can also use the rotational symmetry tool for the vertical and horizontal lines. In this case, it's as if anything that you draw on the left side was taken and then rotated onto the right side instead of flipped and mirrored. Again, I think this is best demonstrated by me actually writing words, because you can see that no matter which way you flip the canvas, the words will be written in the correct direction and they will not be mirrored or backwards. Now the last variant of the Symmetry tool is the radial guide, and I think this is my favorite one because you can get very cool effects with relatively minimal effort. And this sort of thing is really good for people who like to do things like design mandalas or any kind of round symmetrical shape. So you'll see here that it's split into 8 different sections, and anything you draw in one section is then mirrored in all 7 other sections. So again, you can very easily get the effect of a flower or a mandala with very, very little effort. One thing to keep in mind with using this tool is to make sure that the size of your canvas matches what you're drawing, because you'll notice I drew this mandala in the middle of a rectangle, and when I started to draw bigger shapes behind it, some of it got cut off because it drew off the edge of the canvas. So maybe try to avoid that unless that's the look that you're going for. The last thing I'm going to show you is how I use this tool in my actual drawings. This is just a quick sketch of some potion bottles that I did, and I'm going to show you how I use the vertical symmetry tool to make sure each bottle is perfectly symmetrical. All you really have to do is drag the drawing guide to where you want the center of the bottle to be and just start drawing. I did speed up this demo a little bit, but you'll notice I left in a lot of erasing and undoing. A lot of times with drawings like this, I will edit out mistakes that I made in order to speed it up a little bit, but I wanted you guys to see that I don't always get the perfect line the first time, and there is a bit of a learning curve with drawing like this, because sometimes if your angle isn't correct and you draw things perfectly symmetrical, you can get weird dips and weird overlaps and stuff like that. So I did want to leave in the parts that were not perfect the first time around so you can see that it's okay to make mistakes and then undo them and redo them again. And before I leave you to watch the rest of the demo, I do want to point out that I created a separate layer to draw anything that wasn't supposed to be symmetrical. So anything like little bubbles or the writing on the tags or anything that just isn't meant to be reflected is on a separate layer, so it's easier to manage and I don't have to worry about accidentally drawing on the wrong layer. And right about here's where I realized I inked all of these on the wrong layer. I didn't put them on a separate layer. I drew them directly on top of my sketch lines, which meant I had to turn off the recording and redraw them completely before I started the coloring demo.